Hello guys, this is your friend Naruto Addict 2.0 and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is What If Naruto Was Chosen by Kushina Uzumaki and the Queens of Konoha, Part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this in common fo next part. And now let's start the fanfic. Ka-chan looks so why, thought Naruto as he watched his mother masturbate while he pounded his girlfriend. The usual style of Naruto had with Fugaku's wife was of the hardcore variety. This didn't mean he thought of her as a hole he was meant to fill. Despite his domineering personality, he was a helpless romantic and he had a soft spot in his heart for mothers and married women. However, Makoto was special to him and he genuinely couldn't live without her. Their lovemaking was typically rough because it felt most natural to them. By making sweet, tender love to her, he was not only showering her with his affection, but was also showing his mother how romantic and sensitive he could be. Kushina-chan, it's only a matter of time now, thought Makoto as she closed her eyes, her delicious juices gushing from the depths of her for what seemed like the umpteenth time. The spooning position was one of her favorites because it allowed her lover to stimulate her tits and kiss her, all while thrusting in and out of her with long strokes. What the masturbating Uzumaki matriarch didn't know was that the couple she was spying on had played her like an instrument. Makoto did cast a genjutsu, but the illusion wasn't to blindfold her and Naruto. No, all the illusion did was make it seem like their eyes were closed when in reality they could see everything crystal clear. They knew she was watching them and had made that bullshit excuse about genjutsu just to get her to sneak inside her son's room. So, for the past hour they've been ing while watching Minato's wife pleasure herself. Now it was time to take things to the next level. Do you want to role play a little, Narukoi? Queried Sasuke's mother, having just recuperated from her latest orgasm. Her eyes sparkled with lust as she gazed at her son's best friend. A devilish smirk curled to the whiskered ninja's lips. Sure, Miko Heim. How about I play the role of your mother? Time stood still for Kushina as she stopped fingering herself. Shock was plastered across her flushed features. She couldn't believe her friend had made such a request. Why? Asked Naruto, wanting to play along. Why not? Countered Makoto with a vulpine grin. You've told me countless times that Kushina-chan is one of the most beautiful women you've ever seen. I still remember the time when you were looking up her kimono when she bent over to pick up something. Apple red was the color of Minato's wife's face, heat streaming through her entire body. She never thought that her son would do something like that, but it turns out that she was wrong. There were so many things she was learning about him today, like how he loved shoving his fingers up women's asses. But no matter what was revealed to her, nothing could top his terrifyingly huge. That monster he kept imprisoned within his pants could turn even an atheist woman into a devout follower of Kami-sama. I don't see what the big deal was. That baka tomato must have been wearing her old granny panties, continued Makoto in a mock condescending tone. Even she was surprised by what she was saying because this wasn't a part of the plan. At no point was she supposed to create a dialogue where her lover would have to bring up his mother in a UAL manner. She shouldn't have mentioned that past incident. However, she was getting incredibly aroused while acting her part and had gotten carried away by the heat of the moment. Kushina gritted her teeth, her eyebrows furrowing, her red tresses starting to hover in the shape of 9 tails. The jab to her hair was bad enough. What threw her over the edge was hearing the following claim. She didn't wear granny panties. The pair she often wore were a little thicker than the rest in her collection, but she still thought they looked good on her. You're wrong, Miko Heim, argued the blonde sternly. Ka-chan was wearing a tiny black thong and it was riding up her crack. It was one of the whyest things I've ever seen. A trickle of blood ran down Kushina's nose to hear her son defend her with such raw, animalistic desire. He had seen her in that thong. It was the tightest undergarment she owned. Then did this mean he was ally attracted to her? The thought of him lusting after her made her feel better about walking in on him while he was changing. Unfortunately, this also made her feel even more conflicted. Naruto sighed in relief when he saw his mother wiping her bloody nose and looking away from him with an adorable blush. He had debated against answering his lover because agreeing with what she had to say could have potentially elicited a negative reaction from his mother. He was glad that wasn't the case. Truthfully, he was also getting aroused while laying in bed with his lover while the second woman he was in love with was watching them like a hawk. But now that the cat was out of the bag, the couple decided to take the seduction to the next level. Anyway, Sochi-kun, purred Makoto, idly hissing out the S, like a snake. I hear you've been ing my best friend. What do you have to say for yourself? I'm sorry, Ka-chan, said Naruto in a low, deep voice. I can't help myself. She's got amazing tits, I love ing on them. You used to love your Ka-san's S, dear son of mine. You used to on them for hours and drink so much milk. Makoto cupped her puppies and bounced them in her hands. Don't you want to drink your mother's milk again? Naruto lowered his head, taking a tit into his mouth and chewed on the, drawing out a from his lover. Why did you stop letting me on your tits, Ka-chan? They're so perfect and delicious. In just this portion of the roleplay alone, Kushina lost herself to lust. Watching her son copulate with her friend made her realize that he wasn't her baby boy anymore. This was confirmed when she heard that he was tempted when she unknowingly flashed him her pert backside. No, he was not her baby boy. He was now a man who could the loneliness out of her should she request him. Placing her hands on her S, she squeezed them, wishing it was her son doing that to her. Just like yesterday while masturbating in the shower, she was once again taking a trip down memory lane. He used to latch on her tits without warning as a child and wouldn't separate no matter how hard she tried. He would sneak into her bed just so he could lure her. It took a considerable amount of time and patience to get him to stop because he would always wind up snuggling in her bosom. These used to be innocent memories, but her brain was now realizing them. Would he be interested in setting up camp there again after all these years? Give me your milk, Ka-chan. Now. Her son was showing aggression and it made her shove 2 fingers up her cunt. She began drilling them in and out of her, ing herself like a thirsty. My son wants to drink my milk. Sochi-kun, please accept my milk. Her eyes rolled to the back of her head. I'm coming. XXX. Kushina lost count of how many positions her son had taken her best friend in. Sideways, him from behind, him on top, her on top, on the floor, against the wall, in the bathroom. She never thought there could be so many possibilities. Today her UAL knowledge base went through such a massive upgrade that it could no longer endure another information dump. You're so tight, Makoto-sensei. How had her son become so skilled in the art of lovemaking? However, lovemaking was probably the wrong term to use because her son was now taking her friend like a demon in heat. He started off with spinning Makoto around when she was riding him. While doing so, he laid back to where his feet were positioned under her knees and between her legs. He proceeded to bring his arms around her head, pushing her feet up until he had her in a full Nelson hold. Then, he started ing her brains out. From this angle she could see the bulging outline of his humongous shaft as it shaped and reshaped the poor Uchiha matriarchs. Small globs of saliva would shoot out her friend's mouth each time her sons went spearing through her. Her hair was a mess. Those long, beautiful strands of black silk were now hovering messily with each thrust. By this time every part of her body was wet with either sweat or the vaginal fluids she was frequently squirting out. The powerful sounds of her slapping against his thighs were giving her a head rush. All in all, Sasuke's mother looked like she was slowly dying with a perfect, I am being ed stupid, look on her face. This roleplay was so intense that just watching it made Kushina orgasm 5 times in a span of 11 minutes. Her son was the student in this scene while her friend was the teacher. The plot was because he didn't get an A+ on his exam, Naruto decided to shove his down his teacher's throat and some sense into her. But all he did was the poor woman's brains out in the full Nelson position. Until now she didn't know that position even existed. Kushina could not understand how her son had transformed into this kami, who was capable of breaking a veteran kunoichi like Makoto. It's been 4 hours since he began having with Fugaku's wife and he's been rock hard the entire time. How in the was Makoto able to handle him? Once again, she found herself comparing her son to her husband. Once again, she found that Minato couldn't hold a candle to their son. Come in, whimpered the delirious Blackett. Me too, inwardly squealed Kushina as propped up her hips, gushing and soaking the floor of her son's bedroom. Her eyes were starting to close from the sheer number of orgasms she's had thus far. However, she couldn't stop touching herself. This was just too hot. I'm not through with you yet, sensei, growled Naruto, going balls deep inside his lover through a thunderous thrust. You still haven't learned your lesson. Please stop, Naruto-kun, cried Makoto as the blonde rammed her right in the cervix. Please stop. You're breaking me. You're breaking your sensei's. Her lover was more than she could handle already, but the position she was getting stuffed in made it seem like he had packed on another inch. It's too big. I don't care, roared Naruto, roared with his eyes glossing with lust. You are mine, sensei. Pulling his out of her snatch, he realigned himself, then shoved all 14.5 inches of hot meat straight up her in one fell swoop. Mine. Kami, shrieked Sasuke's mother at the top of her lungs, squirting uncontrollably from the sudden, painful thrust. Tears freely flowed down her cheeks, straining her pretty features. Sochi-kun, you're ing her in the, thought Kushina as she let out a gasp before widening her eyes. Relief coursed through her when she realized the couple hadn't heard her. Oh Kami-sama, this is insane. Kushina genuinely thought Naruto was going to kill Makoto with how brutally he was ing her. To her, this wasn't just mind-breaking, it was soul-crushing. What she didn't know was that her son gave it even rougher than this to her friend during their weekend sessions. The basement in the Uchiha compound was locked up with Fuinjutsu, and it was off-limits to Fugaku, Sasuke and Itachi. That basement was where the real hardcore took place. Naruto took the role of Alpha Dom very seriously. Handcuffing Makoto to the bed, table, wall, the sink, or even tying her up with chakra wire while pounding her had become such a recurring fantasy for them that he would cuff in her multiple times during the week. Naruto had even cuffed Fugaku's hands so the man wouldn't be able to masturbate while watching him, the devotion out of his wife. The Uchiha clan had ended up squirming in a puddle of his jizz by the time the couple wrapped things up. Of course, this had occurred during the early stages of his and Makoto's relationship, when he was still seducing her. This was when Naruto would sneak around the Uchiha compound, stealing kisses from Sasuke's mother when Fugaku wasn't looking. Innocent kisses gradually turned to erotic make-out sessions. From there it evolved to him eating out Makoto's at dinner time with her family, blissfully unaware of what was going on under the table. From eating her out, it turned to him shoving his down her throat. Then it ended up with him cuffing Fugaku to the cabinet drawer while he ed Makoto for 14 hours straight. The brown-haired man was fine with being cuckolded due to his submissive male Uchiha genes. However, Naruto wanted to establish that he had stolen the Uchiha's wife and that the man would never get her back. This was solely to exert his authority over the man. But since Kushina was so inexperienced at thanks to her pathetic husband, this style of roughing was beyond her wildest imagination. You are such a lucky bitch, Makoto, thought the red-haired MILF as she stared blankly at her friend, who looked like she getting ed back into her primitive fetus state. Come in GGG. I'm come MMMMMMMINNNNNGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGG over the Naka shrine and build an altar in its place to worship Sochi-kun every night. I would make him my god too if he was ing me like that. XXX. Naruto sighed as he pulled out of Sasuke's mother a final time, watching on as her coughed out his hot jism. He loved seeing her full of his spunk. It was why he loved ending things with a cream pie. Makoto had fallen unconscious as she was unable to last a second longer. She had taken 2 chakra pills, hoping it would help her remain focused on the job at hand. However, even she had her limits. 4 rounds of before breakfast, 2 more after breakfast, then finally a 6-hour-long running session, all of this by nightfall. A civilian woman would have had to get stitches from all that. Thankfully, she was a ninja and her body could take a beating better than a civilian ever could. Despite this, at the end of the day, even after all the years they've spent together, even with all her kunoichi training, she still couldn't handle him. A fond smile curled to the man's lips as he set his mate on his lap and began stroking her beautiful hair. Even though she was all sweaty and her hair looked quite messy, she was still one of the most gorgeous women he had ever seen in his life. He gently pecked her lips, finding it cute on her part to unconsciously kiss him back. Had it not been for his undying love for his mother, he would have been content with taking Makoto to an isolated island and starting a new life with her. It's only a matter of time now, Miko Heim, whispered the blonde as he gently kissed his lover's stomach. Once I claim Ka-chan as mine, I'll finally be able to fulfill the promise I made to you on our first-year anniversary. The promise was to impregnate Fugaku's wife. Holy shit, Ka-chan came buckets from spying on us, announced Naruto's shadow clone, who had been summoned to mop up the floor his mother had drenched. The plan is moving forward quite smoothly. Dispelling his clone, Naruto stared down at his unconscious godmother. It's a good thing Jiraiya-sensei and Fugaku-san have taken care of Tu-san, began the blonde in a deadly serious tone. The Tem and Itachi are also playing their parts from the shadows. Now that I'm certain Ka-chan is lusting after me, I can really start seducing her. I will not rest until she lives and breathes my. I will not stop until I've ed the devotion she has for Tu-san out of her. I will not hesitate to force her to submit to me. She is mine, all mine. Kushina fled the bedroom 10 minutes before the couple's 6-hour-long session came to an end. Naruto could sense that she was in the bathroom and figured she was showering. Now that she was no longer watching him and his godmother have, he could safely say that her presence made the experience 10 times better. All through the positions he had taken Makoto in, his mother kept staring at them, masturbating like her life depended on it. The goal for today was to make her start craving his. Mission accomplished. XXX. Cold water ran down her beautiful face and down the valley of her huge tits. Her rosy pink S were painfully erect as she could vividly recall each and every second of the 6 long hours her son had been copulating with her childhood friend. She tried as hard as she could to push the thoughts away, but it was no use. Her body was saying the opposite to her mind, it was crying out to be used by her son. She tried hard to stop the incestuous thoughts, but it was still no use. Watching those two have such mind-numbing brought out her innermost lust. Due to this, she found herself dripping at the thought of indulging in hot, forbidden romance with her son. She quickly turned off the shower, put on the same clothes she was wearing earlier before racing out the door. What do I do from here? Thought Minato's wife as she barreled down the steps leading downstairs. That full 2 hours she had spent in the bathroom scrubbing away at her body was done out of desperation. She had hoped the long shower would cleanse her of her sins. Instead, it only made things worse for her. What she had done wasn't technically considered cheating, but she still felt dirty from invading on her son's and her friend's privacy. Back then she was suffering from hormonal imbalance which had prevented her from thinking straight. Now that she was back to normal, she was trying her best to put what she had seen behind her. Unfortunately, that was easier said than done. I know Sochi-kun is entitled to love whoever he wants, but he shouldn't be having with married women. Makoto-chan should have been the responsible one and not let it escalate to this state. But then, she paused her internal monologue, squeezing her calves together. But then she wouldn't be getting ed like that. Her husband couldn't provide her with even a fraction of the pleasure Sochi-kun has given her today. She couldn't do it. She just couldn't get her son's monster out of her mind. Closing her eyes, she focused her chakra and reached out for the upstairs area. To her relief, she could sense Makoto and Naruto were still in the blonde's bedroom. She didn't know how to confront either of them. How could she do that without being made out to be the bad guy for spying on them? Why didn't Makoto just file for a divorce from Fugaku rather than cheat on him with Naruto? She could understand the excitement of sneaking around, but it still didn't excuse the woman for her infidelity. But why did her son even entertain the thought of fooling around with a married woman, and with his godmother no less? She thought he had more sense than that. Sadly, she had given him more credit than he was worth. Hello, Ka-chan. Kushina spun around, her violet orbs widening to the size of dinner plates. Multiple thuds rang within her chest as her heart started pacing like no tomorrow. She wobbled a little, feeling the strength leaving her legs. Her chest began to rise and fall, forcing a jiggle out of her huge tits. Her throbbed, her aura emerging out of its hood as she was reminded of the skills of the kami standing before her. Swallowing a lump in her throat, she weakly attempted to look him in the eyes, but all she could do was stare down at his crotch. He was wearing trousers, but all she wanted was to see him without them. Hello, Sochi-kun, stammered the Hokage's wife. What's wrong? Asked the blonde as he stepped closer towards his frozen mother. Are you feeling all right, Ka-chan? Kushina wanted to take a step back, but couldn't find the strength to do so. I'm just feeling a little warm, responded the woman with as much courage as she could gather. What are you doing up? I hope you aren't running a fever, said the blonde, a predatory glint fogging up his cerulean blue orbs. As for me, I was just a little thirsty. You see, I just had me a good, sweaty workout. By workout he meant the hours he had with Fugaku's wife. She knew this, but she didn't know that he knew that she knew this. I see, murmured Kushina with a red hue marching across the contours of her face. Well good night, Sochi-kun. Naruto grabbed a hold of his mother's hand and pulled her towards him. She let out a gasp of surprise and he could see the fear in her eyes as he wrapped his arms around her. Strong, firm arms held her slender waist, his fingers curling around her sides. Massive S mashed against his chest, allowing to also feel her erect S nuzzling against him. He resisted the urge to rip off her shirt and start feasting on her tits, only because he had a plan to follow. Gazing down at her, a frown married his face to see that she had only grown more vulnerable while in his embrace. After mastering the art of senjutsu, he had learned how to clear the mind of anyone who made physical contact with him while he was channeling nature energy. Once he felt her start to relax in his arms, he brushed her hair with a hand and then planted a soft, gentle kiss on the side of her beautiful face. His other hand caressed the small of her back, close to the top of her luscious. A shuddering sigh escaped her as he proceeded to peck her on the forehead. Good night, Ka-chan, whispered the blonde while unwrapping his arms from his mother. Sweet dreams. Kushina's breathing was labored, her heart pounding harder than the pounding her friend had received at the hands of the blonde. All she could think about was that embrace. All she could think about how good it felt being in his arms, how good it felt for a real man to hold her. She had been hugged by her son multiple times, but this was the first time he was doing it while she was fantasizing about him. Never had Minato made her feel this way. Not when they started dating, not when he asked her to marry him, not when they made love for the first time. Not one single time had her husband been able to force such emotions out of her, but their son had done it with just one hug. She was conflicted, still unsure how she would be able to find sleep tonight when all she could think about was Naruto having with the woman she had grown up with. It was an unimaginably powerful physical attraction. To dream about a man who could fill her in ways her husband never could, and then have the opportunity to make those dreams come true. Was she a bad wife for lusting after her son? Was it so bad for her to start accepting these feelings? The only man aside from her husband she could depend on was her son. After all, Naruto was there for her infinitely more times than Minato was ever there for her. She could even remember times when she forgot she was even married to Minato, he was that absent from her life. In any case she would be needing another cold shower. That embrace had her all confused because it came out of nowhere. But the main problem was the fact she could feel her son's gigantic cervix killer pressing against her taut tummy when he was holding her. A dark smirk curled to Naruto's lips as he watched his mother stumbling up the stairs, looking as confused as a lost puppy. Today was a major achievement in his task of one day bedding the woman who gave birth to him. Sooner or later he would be balls deep inside that Uzumaki. But for now, he needed to wake Sasuke's mother up and ask if she could handle a few more rounds of. His monster had just stirred in his pants. It was all in a day's work for the blonde mother-lover. Thick, messy strands of red tresses surrounded her all sides. Her veiled face was also marred by the tears that would randomly start welling in her eyes. She hugged herself, rocking back and forth like a trauma patient. Kushina Uzumaki felt alone and she had no one to comfort her. It's been a few hours since she got cornered by her son in the living room. When she had walked in on him while he was changing, it was the most action she had in years. Staring at his muscular physique, not overly bulky, but not flimsy like her husband. Her son was a stud, with a body built for breeding women and a monster showing who the true man of the house was. There was a line between a man and woman and a mother and son, but that line was blurred when she decided not to look away. This hormonal imbalance played a major role in why she was so easily swayed into spying on him and her best friend having. Since she was thinking with her instead of her head, she hadn't considered the consequence of invading their privacy. Her son really was built for breeding women. Seeing that huge, fat cervix killer pull out of her best friend's tight cunt and watching all that jism ooze out of her was life-changing for her. Then, when he embraced her in the living room, it was like being propelled into a burning furnace. His warm body pressing against hers, his strong arms holding her possessively. She could still remember how close their faces were, inches apart, his hot breath blowing from his parted lips and hitting hers. They were so close to kissing that she found herself ing her lips. She was terrified that their next encounter may result in her begging him to her brains out. It was heartbreaking for her, but she was craving her sons like a thirsty. Shortly after he confronted her in the living room, she shunshined out of her home to appear inside the Hokage Tower. Even though her husband was pathetic she figured at least being in his arms would help her through her emotional turmoil. After flaring her chakra at her husband's secretary, the terrified middle-aged woman was forced to reveal that Fugaku and Jiraiya had escorted Minato to a meeting in grass country. The reason for the meeting was classified because it was a top-secret mission. A heartbroken, miserable redhead took a lonely journey back home. Even the Hokage's secretary felt awful for the woman. Not once in the 22 years she's been with her husband had she cheated on him. Due to how strongly felt about marriage, she refused to break her wedding vows. Then again, she had never been tempted to have an affair with anyone. This time was different. This temptation was just too strong. Whenever she was feeling lost, going to her happy place was able to pull her out of her funk. An example of such a happy place was the memory of Minato rescuing her from those Kumo ninja 10 months after she graduated from the Ninja Academy. However, this happy place just became her forbidden place. Instead of her husband swooping in and outsmarting those kidnappers, she saw her son brutally torturing those goons before murdering them in cold blood. Instead of thanking her husband with a shy smile, she was thanking her son by worshipping the thickness and hugeness of his. She tried putting a lock on that particular section of her mind to prevent herself from thinking about it again. Another happy place was her wedding day. Lilies and roses were donated by her friend Izumi Yamanaka, Inoichi's wife. The ceremony wasn't overly extravagant, but it did show two famous ninja were about to tie the knot. While she was emotional because it was her wedding day, she wasn't surprised to see that her husband was more nervous than her. Even in the academy, Kushina thought of him as a flaky girl trying to pose as a boy. But after falling in love with him, she accepted him as the man who she wanted to father her children. She just didn't take into account the extreme levels of loneliness she would have to endure because of him. This happy place was different now. While the setting was the same, and the guest list looked about right, she found her groom holding her more possessively than normal. The sun was shining brightly down on him, preventing her from catching a clear view of his face. However, the small glimpses of his ruggedly handsome features made her feel all warm and tingly inside. They exchanged their vows, and just as they were about to kiss, she realized that the man she was marrying was her son. Minato was there, but he was sporting two black eyes and bloody bruises all over his body. His hair was a mess and his clothes were torn apart. It was obvious her son had beaten the shit out of his father, but she apparently didn't give two shits about the yellow flash in this dream. This version of her was perfectly fine with ditching Minato at the altar to be with Naruto. She found herself being carried by the whiskered blonde off into the sunset so they could start their new lives as husband and wife. The dream slowly drifted to their honeymoon. The house they had rented was in shambles. Pieces of wood were the remains of their matrimonial bed. Their king-sized mattress was reduced to a deflated pile of mush. The sheets were layered with gallons of their reproductive juice. A variety of dents decorated the walls of their bedroom. The floor was littered with discarded clothes, broken lamps, strands of their hair, and even an empty bottle of anal lubricant. A few days ago, she would have been labeled such a scene as fake or staged. But after seeing what her son was truly capable of, she could easily imagine him breaking everything in sight while dominating his lover. But this wasn't her friend, her son was Ing. He was Ing her. He was Ing, his own mother. Suddenly, she was no longer inside the bedroom as she and her son moved their honeymoon mating into the kitchen. She found herself straddling his lap with his monster tearing through her extra small. His rough, calloused hands were full of her bubble butt, which he had obviously spanked brutally for it to get so red. Her face was identical to the "Ed stupid" look Makoto had on her face when Naruto was doing her in. The broken plates and shards of glass cluttered the area. The beautiful golden chandelier now in pieces on the tiled floor. The breakfast table was destroyed. They had even demolished the sink. A myriad of kinkier, wire incestuous dreams began plaguing her mind. Her eyes snapped open as she gathered control of herself, only to realize two of her fingers were shoved all the way to the knuckles within her. She yanked her fingers out, to see her hand covered in thick, rich, feminine nectar. She hurriedly wiped her hand along her sheets while shedding tears for the umpteenth time. The temptations were getting stronger and stronger, but she could do nothing about it. She needed her husband, she needed him so painfully much right now. Unfortunately for her, he was never there when she needed him the most. Minato Namikaze wasn't an evil or vindictive man, but he was the yellow flash when it came to how quick he was to teleport from his duties as her husband. She shivered from the cold air entering her room from the open window. It was quite chilly tonight, but she didn't care. She just didn't care. Kushina Uzumaki cried herself to sleep that night. XXX. Ah, such warm weather, said Naruto as he exited the Uchiha compound with a satisfied smile on his face. His huge balls were drained of jism as he just wrapped up a 17-hour-long mating session with Sasuke's mother. From yesterday evening to late this morning, he kept milking her for all she was worth. By the time they were done, the sheets were soiled beyond comprehension. The room reeked of so much hardcore that the scent could have been bottled and sold as an aphrodisiac. After summoning a shadow clone to change the sheets and order a new bed, he proceeded to shower with the barely alive woman. Ever since he got together with his best friend's mother, he hasn't gotten his wet by any other woman. For him to be in a monogamous relationship would have came as a shock to his younger, whoring self. Oh, those used to scream, used to beg him to stop, but he wouldn't listen to their cries. Jiraiya paid off a whorehouse for an entire year, then turned to him and told him that every girl who worked there was his to do with as he deemed fit for the next 365 days. No one could interrupt him and no whore could deny him. Back then he was a horny boy with a third arm for A, so you can bet that he tore up left and right. He left the mansion a year later with the knowledge that he had ruined those poor women for their husbands, fiancés, and boyfriends. But that was all in the past now. All those prostitutes helped him hone the skills necessary for seducing Makoto. These skills are now helping him his mother. Anyway, his love for Fugaku's wife is genuine and she means more to him than those flimsy whores ever did. Unlike those women who he had used as slaves, he always listened to Makoto when she would beg him to stop her because she couldn't handle anymore. After leaving a clone to cuddle with her, he took off for his home. It was now time to execute the riskiest and most crucial part of his plan. 36 hours have passed since he sprang the trap on his mother to lure her into watching him and Makoto have. She was avoiding him like the plague yesterday, so he made no attempt to strike up a conversation with her. The plan wasn't to push her too far, it was to leave her as vulnerable as possible so she offers minimum resistance to his advances. Closing the door behind him, he took note of the dull-lit living room and realized his mother hadn't come downstairs yet. Reaching out for the upstairs floor, he could sense that his mother was inside her bedroom. Running over his plan a final time, he stepped into the kitchen and began preparing a breakfast-in-bed surprise for her. Today would be her favorite: bacon and eggs sandwiched between 2 pieces of bread and a cup of orange pekoe tea. He also whipped up a special treat for her. Content with the nutritious meal he had prepared, he made his way upstairs tray in hand. The door to his parents' bedroom made a creaking sound as he yanked down on the handle. Kushina was staring down at her lap, but Naruto didn't necessarily register this as a red flag. However, her jumpy and scared reaction to him walking towards her did put him on guard for a brief moment. Sochi-kun, whispered the redhead hesitantly, her eyes widening. What are you doing in my room? Naruto channeled his inner gentleman and smiled genuinely at his distraught parent. It pained him to see her red, puffy eyes, telling him she had been crying a lot yesterday. But he had to keep her defenses low. He needed to break her emotionally before he could break her physically. It was forced, but the redhead's lips curled up slightly. She could never turn away her child's smile. Aren't you forgetting something? Asked the Hokage's son with an arched brow. For shame, Ka-chan. Don't you remember how we're supposed to start each morning? Right, stammered Kushina as she bit her plump, kissable lips. Good morning, Sochi-kun. Good morning, Ka-chan, warmly replied the blonde. Now I want you to scoot over. It's time for breakfast and today I'll be feeding you. But no buts, interrupted Naruto with a frown marring his face. You've been avoiding me and I don't know why. You will not avoid me this time, Ka-chan. Minato's wife clenched her blanket in her shaky hands when she heard the bed spring creaking as her son sat down at the edge of her mattress. That sound made her toes curl since it reminded her of the noises her son's bed was making when he was ing her friend. She had tried to hide from him yesterday, but now he was in bed with her. To make matters worse, he was breaking up a piece of toast, preparing to feed her like a husband would. A small red hue lit up her cute cheeks as he winked playfully at her. After taking a gander at this from a more logical perspective, she realized that she couldn't keep acting so weird around him. He had already caught on to her change in behavior, and she couldn't afford to let him find out that she had spied on him. Of course, this was only because she wasn't aware he was the one who sprang that trap on her. She took a deep breath, while her son gladly stared at her jiggling tits. Calming her racing heart, she timidly opened her mouth, ready to start acting normally to avoid further suspicion. If she could get through this intimate breakfast with him, she could learn how to take her mind off him altogether. Unfortunately, her body refused to see to reason. The corner of her eye locked itself to her son's crotch and she found herself staring at that gigantic bulge in his trousers. Her pupils dilated as her gaze became too shameful for a married woman. She wiggled her bottom, starting to get hot and bothered with the thought of him yanking down his trousers and shoving his down her throat. Her lips quivered as he nudged her shoulder, bringing her back to reality. Naruto wanted to chuckle as his mother puffed out her cheeks, munching on the bacon and eggs like a chipmunk. She must have sensed his amusement because she dropped her head with a cute blush that simply refused to leave her beautiful face. She soon began eating with gusto, much to his happiness. Murmured Kushina while wiping her mouth with a napkin. That was really yummy, Sochi-kun. Thank you. You're very welcome, Ka-chan, fondly replied the blonde. Oh, I almost forgot. I've brought you some dessert to enjoy with your tea. Violet orbs sparkled as Kushina thanked her son for being so thoughtful. No matter how she was feeling towards him, she knew there was no one who spoiled her more than Naruto. Perhaps the dreams she was having about him were just that, dreams. She was just hoping things don't escalate from here. Her mouth watered to see 2 blueberry pies being presented to her. She looked up at him with a gorgeous smile. Her son was a hero to Wave Country because of his valiant efforts to save the countrymen from the dictator who was ruling over them. The aftermath was an economical goldmine because the neighboring countries all pitched in to transform Wave from a fisherman town into a major port city. This brought a lot of business into the elemental nations from the western continents. Such businesses included baked goods, technological items, sporting goods, etc. The baked goods, particularly the blueberry pies, were Kushina's favorite. I picked these up on my last mission, began Naruto as he stared into his mother's eyes. I bought a whole box of these pies as well. I placed the scroll in my room, but I'll give it to you once you finish up with breakfast. Biting her lips, Minato's wife leaned in and softly planted a kiss on her son's whiskered cheek. Her lips lingered for a moment, as she was debating if he would be interested in a more intimate kiss. Her heart raced as she imagined herself locking her lips with her son. She shook away her incestuous thoughts, feeling disgusted with herself for ruining such a perfect family bonding moment. "Thank you," whispered the emotionally uplifted redhead. "Don't mention it," said the blonde genuinely, though the devilish gleam in his cerulean blue orbs spoke otherwise. His hands gripped over a familiar cylindrical can as he revealed it to his parent. And voila, here's the icing on the cake. Soft, peaceful orbs grew wider and wider until she was staring at her son with horrified eyes. She could never forget this can of whipped cream. Her son had used that very can to spray thick, delicious cream all over her best friendess before eating it straight off her doughy cheeks. The sudden flashbacks grew more vivid, making her recall everything in full, graphic detail. She sank her butt cheeks deep into her mattress, wiggling her hips as her panties grew damp. Her features flushed darker, her heavy breathing causing her huge tits to bounce up and down. "What's wrong, Ka-chan?" asked the blonde with concern, again concealing his true emotions. Naruto never carried out a plan without thinking it over at least thrice. What he was doing to Kushina wasn't okay seeing as he was in love with her, but it was imperative for him to keep building and breaking her confidence so he could weaken her defenses and keep her vulnerable. His mother was a strong-willed kunoichi and a normal seduction would have no effect on her. Spending all those years with her has helped him understand what makes her tick and how her mind works. Because of his relationship with Makoto, his mother's best friend, he was able to update his knowledge base on stuff he didn't know about the redhead with his lover's help. Minato may be Kushina's husband, but he didn't know her half as well as Naruto did. Seeing that his mother was frozen stiff, he lowered the nozzle to his hand. Concentric clouds of whipped cream came spraying on top of his index finger, but the thickness of the cream prevented it from oozing down. "Here you go, Ka-chan," cooed the blonde as he brought his finger to his mother's face. "Have a taste." She was so conflicted. She was so wet. Kushina chewed on her bottom lip, almost drawing blood by how deeply she was affected to see her son's finger caked with whipped cream. There was no way she could refuse without arousing suspicion from him. If she told him this was inappropriate, she would have no logical argument to back up her claim. Whenever Naruto was cooking, he would always let her have a taste off his finger. She used to do the same thing with him, but back then it was just comfortable, family bonding. If she agreed to that whipped cream off his finger right now, then she would be taking the first step into making her incestuous fantasies into reality. If she refused to have a taste, her son would be in her face and demand an explanation. He was stubborn like that. He knew she did enjoy whipped cream, so she couldn't use the excuse of not liking it. The only possible way to refuse the finger being offered to her was for her to reveal that she had peeped on Naruto and Makoto. She had no way out of this. Swallowing the lump in her throat, the Uzumaki clenched her jaw before hesitantly parting her full lips, revealing a glimpse of her pearly whites. Her son's narrowed eyes made her shudder and work her jaw harder until he had a clear view of her tongue. Time stood still for her as his fingers slowly entered her mouth. Realizing once again that she had no way out of this, She closed her eyes and let herself go. Naruto sighed dreamily as his mother gently scraped his fingertip with her teeth. Her tongue slowly slithered around, delivering a wet, juicy greeting to the side of his finger. Holding in his breath, he felt her tongue running along his fingertip, ing with a little more vigor than he had anticipated. For the first half of the finger ing, she faced no problems. Then out of the blue, memories of her son having with Fugaku's wife flashed inside her mind. She clenched her pert rear, closing the bridge between her cheeks to prevent him from flipping her over and filling the crevice of her tush with whipped cream. It didn't even occur to her until now that he was thrusting his finger in and out of her mouth. She was gobsmacked by his bold actions, but more shocked to realize she was actually wrestling his finger with her tongue. He had his eyes closed, while hers were fluttering. That whipped cream had long since been devoured, but she was still ing on his finger, lathering it with saliva, all the while producing juice and soaking her mattress. She gradually released his finger from her mouth and what he saw caused his monster to stir in his pants. The tip of her tongue was running over her full lips, her violet eyes were blinking with what he could only describe to be pleasant surprise. What had him captivated was the soft, satisfied smile resting on her face. As much as he and his wanted a repeat of that sensual performance, he knew his mother would realize what he was trying to do. He couldn't have that, now could he? Good? Asked the blonde with a deep, husky voice. Kushina'd her lips, still with her eyes closed. Apple red was the color of her face. Great, chirped Naruto. Now let's have ourselves some dessert and tea. 2 creams and 1 sugar. I followed the instructions to the T, joked the blonde, earning an involuntary giggle from his mother for the lame pun. Cheers, Ka-chan. Although she was still feeling incredibly aroused by what had recently transpired between her and her son, she knew she had to hang in there for a little longer. Raising her cup, she met his warm gaze. Cheers, Sochi-kun. The two made small talk while they ate blueberry pie and sipped their tea. Naruto was feeling excited because his plan was working without fail. Not only did he have his mother on the ropes the entire time, but he was also able to successfully predict her every move. The only thing that surprised him was that amazing technique she had employed to on his finger. The thought of her doing that again, this time on his, was overloading his libido. Meanwhile, Kushina found herself relaxing and having fun with her son. But just like before when she was gaining back some of her confidence, he went and broke it and made her vulnerable again. So will you tell me what's wrong, Ka-chan? Tightly gripping her cup, the redhead shook her head. Is this about San? Asked the blonde since his parent refused to answer him. I'm sure it is. He is the cause of your pain, after all. Kushina snapped her head up and stared at her son. Perhaps she had just imagined it, but she could have sworn she detected loathing in his voice when he had mentioned her husband. Don't say such things, protested the redhead, though it wasn't out of defense, it was out of habit. Your father's really busy and as the Hokage he has a lot of work to do. He's too busy for you? Asked the whiskered Junin softly, his voice a mere whisper. I don't care that he's missed several of my birthdays because of his schedule. I don't care that he almost never comes home. What I do care about is you and how he's never there for you when you need him. Doesn't he realize how lonely you are without him? His mother flinched as he reached out for her, but due to her holding her teacup, she wasn't able to push him away. He's too busy for you, repeated the blonde, this time a little harshly as he took her face in his hands. Hokage-sama is a fool. Swallowing the lump in her throat, Kushina relaxed under her son's touch. She was forced to do it, not because he was dear to her, but because he was caressing her face with his magic fingers. Her shoulders dropped, her violet orbs fluttering as she leaned into him. It was a fairy tale-like moment for her as he stared into her eyes, offering her his affection, offering her a glimpse into the world of pleasure that awaits her should she offer herself up to him. Naruto took the teacup from his mother and placed it on her nightstand. Getting back to her, he seized her by the waist before pulling her towards him. Due to her emotional state, she was unable to resist getting yanked forward and smoothly landed on his lap. An invisible bolt of lighting struck him, causing electricity to course through his veins as her big, fat, juicy derriere snuggled against his crotch. This was the first time he was holding her like a lover would, and it felt incredible. For the past 6 years he's been pushing the good memories of his father out of his mother's mind by indirectly bringing up how much of a neglectful father and husband the man was. Now that his mother was in such a vulnerable state, he could badmouth Minato by directly speaking about the man's inexcusable faults. By swooping in and capturing her in his arms, he was able to feed a subliminal message into her brain that he's more dependable and all around better than the Hokage. No ninja training could help her. No words could escape her. Kushina shuddered against her son, her huge tits and erect S rubbing with his hard chest as each breath she took made her chest heave up and down. Her features darkened, gaining a similar texture to that of her hair when she realized that she was sitting on the very that she was fantasizing about. Thoughts have the power to make things happen. She was thinking about her sons, and now she was able to feel it pulsating beneath her. Saliva dried up in her mouth as she could feel his humongous shaft throbbing between the two symmetrical spheres of her bottom. Her clenched out of fear and she lifted herself a few centimeters off his lap. He wasn't even fully erect, yet she was so terrified by his size that she wanted to cover up her. Oh, his big, fat one-eyed beast could put demons to shame. Still, her resolve was broken as once again she relaxed in his embrace. He was holding her so tenderly, so lovingly. Her heart hammered a loud, frantic heartbeat as his eyes peered into her own, again silently showering her with his affection. His hands came up and down her back, massaging her clothed flesh with his fingertips laced in chakra. Soft S escaped her, she was becoming putty in his hands. There was no way she could fight him off, not when he was making her feel so cherished. Her eyes lost all vibrant color when she realized the full extent of the effect her husband's absence had on her. Because he was never home, her self-confidence had taken a hit. Whenever she was informed that he would be arriving home for dinner, she would put on the tightest of dresses. This was out of hope of getting lucky, only to hear Hokage-sama had an early day in the office tomorrow. She had become so self-conscious that she began blaming herself for her husband's lack of interest in her. This warm embrace was helping rebuild her confidence. You raised me and showered me with unconditional love, continued the blonde as he planted a kiss on the side of his mother's face. You've always been patient with me. Even when I was being stubborn, you never raised your voice at me or punished me. You were the perfect role model, you were the perfect parent. Kushina smiled tearfully at her son. That's what mothers do, Sochi-kun. Not all mothers are like you, Ka-chan, argued the 18-year-old man. No mother can hold a candle to you. Not even Makoto-chan, was what Kushina wanted to say in response, but decided against it due to her not wanting to ruin the little happiness she was being blessed with. You still shouldn't talk with your father with such discontent, Databane. He's just trying his best. Oh really now? Asked the blonde with an arched brow. Who taught me how to read and write? Who took me to the academy and picked me up afterward? Who taught me my first jutsu? But we're not talking about his neglect of me. We're talking about you. When has he ever appreciated all you do for him? How many times did you have to throw out food all because Hokage-sama didn't bother showing up during his breaks? How many anniversary outings has he ruined because he didn't clear his schedule? How many times have I caught you shedding tears because of him neglecting you? His mother was shaking from having to recall all those painful memories. Do you want me to continue? Kushina shook her head with tears trickling down her face. How many times had she shed tears because of the man she was married to? Adding this time to the list, she would have to say more times than her lonely heart can bear. How many times did she have to throw out the food she had cooked for him? Countless. How many anniversary dinners has he skipped out on? 7 and counting. Did he even appreciate her? She didn't even want to answer that question. So many of those anniversary and birthday gifts she had seen on her nightstand, all with her husband's signature. Did Minato really think she wouldn't find out their son had purchased all those gifts for her? Minato Namikaze was her life partner, but he just couldn't fill their son's shoes. This was the sort of far-sighted seduction Naruto has performed on his mother over the past 6 years. Whenever he would buy a chain or necklace for her, he would forge his father's signature on the gift, but leave the receipt in his pant pocket. Then, when his mother would collect his clothes to do laundry, she would find that he was actually the one who had purchased that gift, and not her husband. She involuntarily leaned in as her son began brushing away her tears. "We're going out tonight," declared the blonde with a tone that left no room for debate. "I'll be waiting for you downstairs at exactly 7 p.m. I want to see you all dolled up, okay?" Without giving her a chance to respond, he ruffled up her long, luscious red hair and then smooched the side of her face. His lips lingered on her puffy cheek a little longer than a son's lips should be on his mother. He kissed her again, this time on her left cheek. The next victim of his lips was her forehead as he pecked her with as much love as he could expel from his lips. His fingers gently tickled her back as he ran his palms along her sides. Her eyes were closed, but the look on her face told him that she was enthralled with the affection he had provided her. Hoisting her up a few inches off his lap, he placed her back on the comfortable sheets. Without another word, he grabbed the empty tray from the bed before finally taking his leave. Letting out a breath she didn't know she had, Minato's wife lowered her hand, resting it on her chest, over her heart. Her face was a rich shade of scarlet, her breathing was erratic. There was no touching of their lips, but each of those kisses made her heart want to jump out of her chest. "Sochi-kun, what are you doing to me?" murmured the red-haired MILF. "Don't you have Makoto-chan now? She's cheating on her husband to be with you. Then why did it feel like you?" Halting the dialogue she was having with herself, she went over the ramifications of having a night out with her son instead of her husband. This wouldn't be the first time the two would be out and about on a stroll around the village. Since Minato was almost never home, she would often be seen in some of Konoha's hot spots with her son. However, this would be the first time she would go out with him while harboring incestuous feelings for him. Would this date be considered cheating? No matter how badly she wanted to stay faithful to her husband, she couldn't help but be attracted to the obviously more dominant blonde. "I don't know what you want with me, Sochi-kun," whispered the mother as she toyed with her blanket. "But the last thing I want to do is disappoint you like your father has disappointed me." With a shaky breath, she got out of bed and frowned down at her soiled sheets. XXX. It was now 7 p.m. Naruto was prepared to rock his mother's world tonight. He was ready to her little by little all through their date. But he wasn't prepared to see one smoking hot, nearly unrecognizable female walking down those steps. Her heart-shaped face was flushing from excitement and nervousness. Her lips were a pretty cerise, coated in lipstick and lip gloss, bringing out her purple eyes. Kushina Uzumaki was wearing a black spaghetti strap dress. The garment could only be described as tight-fitting, so the voluptuous figure Kami-sama had blessed her with was deliciously accentuated in that white thing. Her huge tits were pretty much popping out of her dress with how much the fabric was hugging her skin. A generous amount of cleavage was being shown, but not enough for anyone to say she was wearing a S uniform. His huge, fat stirred in his pants as he saw her glorious bubble butt begging to be spanked as her plump hips swayed with each step she took down the stairs. The dress was fashionably short, but it wasn't so short that she could make a pervert's day by bending over. This was nothing like the mini dresses he's seen some of those whores he's wearing. Her long red hair was styled the same and it was flowing freely down her shoulders. The only change was that his mother made some cute little curls at the end of her hair. The hue of her skin not only matched this hairstyle, but gave her quite a smoldering white look. No makeup had been applied on her features from what he could tell, not that she needed any. "You look so beautiful, Ka-chan," breathed out Naruto as he helped his mother take that final step down the stairs. "Thank you, Sochi-kun," said Kushina shyly while biting her lips. "You look really handsome." Naruto smirked as his mother blushed to see him in a skin-fitted shirt, which did nothing to hide his lean, but muscular physique. Reaching out to pick up a blazer, he put it on, while his mother tried not to take a sneak peek at his crotch. The pants he was wearing weren't special looking, but he had them custom built because he simply couldn't fit into ready-to-wear pants with how huge his was. Thanks, replied the blonde. But tell me this, why haven't you ever worn this dress before? Fiddling with the hem of her dress, Kushina avoided her son's gaze. I had purchased it years ago, but decided to wear it for our night out. You don't think I'm a little old for this dress? You think you're a little old for that dress? Asked the blonde with rage burning inside his cerulean blue orbs. I hate how San has made you so self-conscious that you're questioning your own beauty. Kushina could have snapped her neck with how fast she turned her head to gaze at her son. He looked furious, like he was ready to kill a bitch, the bitch being his father. This reaction instantly told her that her son didn't agree with her being too old to pull a dress like this off. She couldn't help but squeak as he yanked her by the hand and began leading her to the full-length mirror in the downstairs gallery. Take a good look and then tell me what you see, said Naruto seriously while gripping his mother's shoulders, staring deep into her eyes. The intense gaze sent such chills down her spine that she got frozen in place. She weakly turned to the mirror and glanced down at her stilettos. Even though she hated wearing these things, she couldn't deny the confidence she got out of the height boost. She had to admit they were quite classy. Her eyes ran up her toned legs until she was gazing at the fabric of her black dress. From the light shining down on them, she could see a glossy onyx hue on her supposedly jet black dress. She thought it looked pretty. She debated against doing a little pirouette, just to see how well her was being accentuated by the skin-fitting fabric. What she didn't know was that her son was worshipping her tush with his eyes. She brought her gaze up and took a deep breath, almost pushing her huge tits out of the top of her dress. A soft smile curled to her shiny lips. I look good. Good, muttered the blonde as he appeared behind his mother. Good. Staring at the mirror, he saw she was looking at his reflection, taking in the anger in his eyes. You are a knockout, Ka-chan. I could ramble on about how gorgeous you look right now, but no words can fully capture your beauty. You better hope I don't catch you questioning yourself like that again. I also hope no man dares look at you the wrong way tonight. I won't hesitate to kill anyone who I deem guilty of that crime. Only I have the right to stare at my mother, added Naruto mentally. Her son had always been possessive of her. Even as a child he would glare at men who he caught staring at her. To see her baby boy so eager to defend her was the cutest thing. Now it was hot. She could imagine him doing it. His strong hands wringing a poor fool's neck all because he was eyeing her like a piece of meat. The thought made her giddy, made her feel wanted. Due to her husband's absence, she became desperate for approval. It mattered not that she was a powerful kunoichi. She was still a human being, she was still a woman with needs. All those compliments she wanted to hear from Minato, the approval of his which she was so desperate to seek, she found it all with her son. Thank you, Sochi-kun, said the mother with a more confident voice. So where are we going? Don't mention it, Ka-chan, answered the blonde genuinely. As for where we're going, I'm going to keep that a secret for now. Kushina looked up at her son with a big, girlish pout and crossed her arms against her chest, accentuating the massive tits Kami-sama had blessed her with. She huffed as he laughed at her before shaking her head. He offered her his arm, and she linked it with hers. Mine, thought Naruto hungrily as he glanced over his shoulder to see his mother's big, fat stretching the fabric of her dress. All mine. XXX. Seduction isn't making someone do what they don't want to do. Seduction is enticing someone into doing what they secretly want to do already. This is why the seduction of Kushina Uzumaki was working. Ichiraku ramen. Chirruped the gorgeous MILF. This is just what I need, Databane. We're only here to get takeout, Ka-chan, answered Naruto in a stern voice. And I've already placed the order, so you can't have your regular all-you-can-eat Uzumaki special. Kushina pouted like a spoiled princess who didn't get a pony for her birthday. Unfortunately for her, puppy dog eyes no jutsu didn't work on her son. It was eerie, but somehow, he was immune to the ultimate jutsu. I sometimes wonder who the parent is between the two of you, joked Tyuki as he placed a fairly large box on the counter. Anyway, here's your ramen. I've also tossed in some extra napkins, sauces and a couple pairs of chopsticks just in case. Excellent, said Naruto while sealing the box into a scroll, then sealing it into his wrist. Taking out his wallet, he laid more than the necessary amount for the dinner. Keep the change, old man. We'll be seeing you later. Good night. Good night, old man, added the redhead, waving excitedly at her aged friend before following her son out the ramen stand. Naruto smoothly slid his hand across the perfectly symmetrical spheres of Kushina's while moving in to wrap an arm around her. Minato's wife was daydreaming about ramen and wasn't paying attention, so her son was copping several feels, taking full advantage of her airheadedness. Tyuki watched the mother-son duo leave their stand, but couldn't see that the blonde was feeling up his mother. This was because of a certain red-eyed man placing a genjutsu on him. Tyuki is a family friend to Kushina Oba-san and Hokage-sama. There's no telling what his reaction will be to the dobi getting physical with his mother, thought Sasuke while deactivating his dojutsu. I can sense Ni-san's already at the next location, so I should meet up with him there. So far so good, dobi. XXX. They say curiosity killed the cat, but there's no seduction more effective than curiosity. By keeping his mother on her toes, Naruto was able to keep the ball in his court all through the night. Whenever she would ask him a question, he would give her a cryptic answer, which heightened her curiosity. Next on the agenda was for him to take Kushina to her favorite park. His shadow clone had laid out a tablecloth on the grass. Various dishes and drinks were set on the tablecloth. Kushina's face showed great shock and excitement because this was going to be her first picnic in almost 2 decades. The two started off the lightest item on the menu, then worked their way up until Kushina was eating her body weight in ramen. Because there's no aphrodisiac greater than talking, Naruto kept engaging his mother in small talk to ensure he was on her mind the entire time they were together. A simple stroll around the village was next on the bucket list. So far, everything was going better than he had envisioned in his head. His mother was fully enthralled by his gentleman's side. When she felt a little chilly, he took off his blazer and put it on her. By romancing her, he was seducing her to channel all her lust for him and slowly transform it into genuine, honest-to-goodness love. Now it was time to see if he was seducing her mind properly. Oh look, we're close to the Thames house, said Naruto as he pointed at the gated community. Do you want to stop by there and say hello to Makoto Oba-san? He was good, really good. Kushina had realized it just now, but her son was one splendid actor. Just 2 days ago, he was calling his godmother, Miko Haim, wiling her in ways that her husband never could. Then again, a majority of the positions her best friend got Ed in demanded Naruto's monster, not Fugaku's itty-bitty PP. The redhead figured her son must have been concealing his relationship with the woman because he didn't want her to find out. Sadly for the couple, she caught the live show of them knocking boots, or so she thought. Anger started bubbling from the depths of her core, igniting a fire in her violet orbs. She didn't want to see her friend right now. But most of all, she didn't want her son to see her friend right now. She could imagine Makoto smirking at her with that blasted trademark Uchiha smirk and boasting about how she's able to handle Naruto's gigantic. It was so easy to picture that scenario that she clenched her fists so hard that she almost drew blood. Jealousy was said to be just a lack of self-confidence, but she called bullshit on that. After all the wet dreams she's had about him, coupled with her lust and growing attraction towards him, she couldn't stand the thought of him being with anyone else but her. She glared at him, earning her a confused glance from him before she grabbed his hand and began dragging him in the opposite direction. A dark smirk curled to his lips as his mother led him out of sight of the Uchiha district. She hadn't said a word about why she had done that, but no words were necessary. Kushina Uzumaki was almost broken. He just needed to observe a little more patience. XXX. The couple now stood on a man-made stage which Naruto had built with the help of his shadow clones. A combination of materials were pooled together to build this stage, and by Kami was it a bitch to set up. This stage was temporarily set up in the deepest end of Training Ground 7. Itachi and Sasuke were both on guard duty and were stationed close to the ground. Naruto had made sure no one would interrupt his date with his mother. Music could be heard blaring from a portable sound system. It was quite the beautiful symphony, a guitar and piano instrumental with a hint of violins and orchestral vocals in the background. Naruto had just asked his mother to a dance. There was just something about seeing a mature woman working it on the dance floor that excited him. This is why he would often make Fugaku's wife give him a lap dance. But this was his mother, and he wanted to see her move that MILF body like it was meant to be moved. He wanted her to shake that like it was meant to be shook. While he wasn't Kami's gift to all women when it came to the art of dancing, he wasn't an amateur by any means. Seduction is physical for some and mental for others. But to him, seduction is a delicate dance and a man's ultimate weapon in winning a woman's affection. He had scoffed at Jiraiya when the old fart told him that he was taking him to a renowned dance instructor. The meeting was fine, but the dance was awkward, when it started. He was thankful that shit wasn't televised. Learning how to dance from his hot instructor was fairly difficult. However, he had the super cheat code known as the Shadow Clone Jutsu. After spending months studying under her, she was mostly on her hands and knees when he was in her. He was able to gather that everything in a woman, her mind, her heart, her body, her soul, can be d through a dance if done right. Aside from Sasuke's mother, he didn't lure any other woman into dancing with him because he has to hold genuine feelings for a woman for this seduction to work. If done right, he can channel his feelings for a woman, direct them straight to her heart and every part of her with one dance. His feelings for his mother are pure and she holds a place in his heart that no one, not even Makoto, can replace. Hence, it was only logical for him to ask her to dance with him. No, declared Kushina as she placed her hands on her childbearing hips. Let's do something else. It wasn't that she didn't want to dance. She just ed at it. We are dancing and that is final, declared Naruto with a deep, powerful voice, freezing his mother in place. You aren't allowed to have a say in this, Ka-chan. Now give me your hand. A shiver ran down Kushina's spine as she bore witness to the assertive side of her son, the side of him that didn't take shit from anyone. She was reminded that the man standing before her wasn't her husband. This wasn't the flaky man who cowered whenever she raised her voice. This wasn't the man who she could boss around and expect to bend to her every whim. No, this was the man who knew how to dominate and exert his authority. This was the man who has been seducing her for the past 6 years and slowly making her submissive to him. Then, out of nowhere, his veteran expression morphed into a soft, loving gaze. She flushed a cherry red as he bent at the waist in a gentleman-like fashion. Your hand, Ka-chan, repeated the blonde, a little gentler this time. Kushina let out a breath she didn't know she had as she offered her hand to her son. Before she knew it, he was taking her hand in his. She felt his lips brush against the back of her hand as he planted a soft kiss on her skin. He smooched her hand a second time before he let go of her hand and placed his hands around her waist. The dance hadn't even begun, yet she was already out of breath. Let go, whispered the blonde in a husky voice as he leaned into his mother's ear. Don't think. Just let the music guide you until you find your rhythm. Minato's wife closed her eyes, shuddering pleasurably from the tone in which her son was speaking to her. No matter how hard she wanted to escape this dance, she knew he wasn't going to let her go. Accepting her fate, she rested her head against the brick wall that was his chest. Her huge tits pressed against his hard chest, her arms lightly linking around his neck. Naruto kept his hands on his mother's waist, reminding himself that it wasn't time for him to start reaching down and fondling her scrumptious just yet. He tightened his hold on her, just a tad, before starting to sway to the music. She awkwardly followed his lead, but was able to find her rhythm within a couple of minutes. The slow-paced instrumental helped her in that regard. She peeked her head up, trying to catch a glimpse of his face. It astounded her how a shinobi of his caliber could be so graceful in an activity that was poles apart from his profession. On the battlefield, he was a seasoned killer, yet right now he looked so majestic. He was holding her, gliding them around the stage. As his mother, she swelled with pride as he showed her his skills. Where did he learn how to dance like this? The academy didn't offer dance as an elective course, so he couldn't have studied the art there. In ninja villages like Konoha, dancing wasn't exactly a popular conversation starter. His hold on her got tightened on every turn, in turn squishing her against his chest. As she moved together with him, she felt his leg brushing against hers. Good, said the blonde, once again into his mother's ear. Keep your mind focused on the music. It's about to pick up. Kushina let out a quivery sigh as she felt his hot breath spearing through her ear canal. His words kept repeating inside her head, but at no point did she stop swaying her motherly hips. The movements of the dance and being in such an intimate setting with him got her inner juices flowing. She was embarrassed, but tried not to let it obvious that she was getting turned on. But it was obvious they were feeding off each other and both became aware of the chemistry between them. Naruto found this incredibly exciting. Sure, Makoto knew how to work that delicious of hers, but this was a result of months of practice. The Sharingan helped her in that regard as well. However, there were strong UAL undertones in the way Kushina was moving. Even though she was just swaying along and following his lead, he could see the potential hidden beneath the surface. A smile curled to his lips. His mother was truly special. "We," squealed Kushina adorably as she twirled and swirled with her son. "I never thought dancing could be so fun." "I'm glad that you're having fun, Ka-chan," was the fond reply of her son. "We're just about to reach the part where the tempo takes a sudden jump. Stay focused." Kushina nodded, but the music changed too quick for her to adjust. Her son grabbed her waist and pulled her against him, allowing her to feel his monster pressing up against her stomach. All those urges came rushing back as he massaged her stomach with his shaft, as though he was trying to communicate with her womb. She became sluggish, almost tripping over her heel. His leg briefly slid between her legs, his upper thigh brushing against the wet lips of her. Her auris started to erect and slowly protruded from its sheath. Thankfully she was wearing undergarments or otherwise she would have had to end this date here and now. She nervously sank her head into his chest and unconsciously began massaging his chest with her massive tits. She could no longer pay attention to the tune as he danced with her under the moonlight. "You're getting sloppy," teased the blonde, earning him a glare from his mother. "Move your hips." He tightened his hold on her waist and began moving her by himself. Like this. His hand was on her hip, held away from her skin only by the fabric of her dress. The skin of his hand felt so soft against hers. It felt so right to be held so close by her son. He spun her all of a sudden, forcing the air out of her lungs as she let out a gasp. She could feel his eyes on her as she completed her circle under his arm. She could sense him drinking in every curve of her body. Strong, muscular arms snaked around the creamy skin of her neck. She bit back as her son began tracing the small of her back. She leaned in to rest her head on his shoulder. His masculine scent was like an aphrodisiac for her and she found herself taking multiple whiffs. To her surprise, her son was breathing in her hair, smelling the scented shampoo she used to keep her red tresses nice and shiny. "Amazing," whispered Kushina breathlessly. "Where did you learn how to dance like that, Sochi-kun?" "It's a long story," began the blonde. "I'll tell you some other time. For now, I want you to prepare yourself because the music is about to change drastically." Oh, that music changed all right. It wasn't fast, but the rhythm made no sense to her. Before she was swaying along and her son would guide her when she was expected to move. Now he had pulled off the training wheels and she was stumbling all over the place. In her frustration, she didn't see or feel him wrapping his arms around her. She was broken from her thoughts when his lips brushed ever so lightly over her forehead. The music kept playing, but she was filled with silent dread. Their eyes locked as he pulled away from her, gauging her reaction. She was out of breath, but didn't pull away when he leaned in to peck her forehead a second time. It was electric. Sparks raced through her with that simple act of affection. That forbidden lust she had for him was slowly being absorbed by her heart as a more powerful attraction towards him began forming. She looked deeply into his eyes, yearning to know what he was feeling. "Relax," whispered Naruto while holding his mother's waist. "We're in no rush, Ka-chan. Take it slow." It was time for the ultimate seduction to kick in. Kushina nodded, breathlessly, as she once again snaked her arms around her son's neck. She kept her gaze on him, studying his expression, all the while trying to control her growing feelings for him. Unable to resist the intimate moment, she lowered her head and rested it on his shoulder. Her huge tits pressed up against him as he tightened their embrace, but this time she was welcoming the sensations it was bringing her. 30 minutes into this and Minato's wife began losing her mind. What she didn't know was this seductive dance was effectively breaking down every last one of her defenses as Naruto's feelings for her began cruising along the arteries leading to her heart. Memories of her as a child came back to her in a flashback. She used to be a princess story fanatic and had a big crush on Prince Charming. Growing up, she realized that the story was just fiction and such a man didn't exist. However, dancing with him was making her feel what she used to feel for that fictional perfect man. She could remember her wedding day, when Hiruzen Sarutobi, who was acting as a minister, urged her and her husband to dance to get the party started. Oh, how she wanted to burn the memory of that dance. Minato was so scared of taking the lead, and she wasn't sure how to talk sense into him. Naruto, on the other hand, has proved that he can handle her when she's in her tomboy mode. By easing her and leading her in this dance, she realized why she depends on him more than his father. Maybe, just maybe, her son was her Prince Charming. For a brief moment, she pulled away from him to stare into his eyes. The temptations were there, but now even her heart and soul began yearning for him. She used to call his attraction towards him forbidden and taboo. Now she was finding the idea of them coupling to be pure and sacred. All that was keeping her from making her wildest dreams come true was her stance on infidelity. But wasn't her son fascinated with her ass? She knew he was because he mentioned it to Makoto when he was having with her. So why wasn't he trying anything now? She was in the perfect position for him to cop a few feels and it would be fine since they were slow dancing. Did this mean he was no longer interested in her? Was he only interested in Makoto now? If I don't act now, I may lose Sochi-kun forever, thought Kushina with her heart sinking in her chest. Dancing with him has shown me what a future with him would be like and I want to be a part of it. I can't let him end the night with him sneaking out of our home and continuing having with Makoto. Even if she is my best friend, I can't let her take my son from me. I can't lose him, not him, anyone but him. She could handle Minato rejecting her over and over. That man has hurt her for years with his absence and he rarely makes up for it. However, Naruto was there for her more than her husband ever was. His rejection would hurt her the most. She closed her eyes, wiggling her pert rear, unconsciously using her jiggling cheeks to invite him to grope her. She made her choice. By Kami, she made her choice. Forgive me, Minato. Flushed face, nervous feet shuffling, right knee bent, and, knowing way, thought Naruto as he read his mother's facial expressions while taking note of her jittery moves. Me sideways, she's doing her why fidgeting. Why fidgeting was Kushina's variant of giving the why eyes. Or in other words, it was her way of saying, come and me. Due to how long he's been chasing after his mother, he's studied her every quirk, the way she thinks, moves, eats, breathes, you name it. By hiding in the invisibility cloak jutsu and masking his presence, Naruto would often take note of when his mother would dress up like a hot for his father. Whenever she tried convincing Minato to have with her, she would often do this fidgeting gig which Naruto had personally nicknamed, why fidgeting. It took him 6 long years of seducing her for her to finally break. He wasn't going to waste a second longer. Lowering his hands just a tad, he ordered his palms to find the full swell of the spheres of his mother's big, Round he slowly took a handful, amazed at how heavy yet soft they were. No matter how many times he's worshipped Makoto's derriere, his mother's was in a class of its own. So perfectly proportioned and firm like ripening fruit, curving exquisitely out from her waist and down to her matronly thighs. Casting his gaze onto her beautiful face, he found no resistance from her. He had truly broken her. Sochi-kun, thought Kushina as she felt her son needing her butt, but did nothing to stop him. She was the one who had offered it to him in the first place. This went against her stance on marriage, but she couldn't deny her feelings for her son anymore. I hope you know what you're getting yourself into, said the blonde as he stopped groping his mother and took her flushed face in his hands. Do you know what I'm going to do to you, Ka-chan? Kushina breathed heavily as she whispered a soft, what? I am going to you, answered Naruto with a smoldering husky voice. I am going to you so hard that you'll forget all about Toussaint. This is what you want, is it not? Lowering her gaze to the ground, she nodded timidly. She was trying not to let her son see the hot lust in her eyes as he said those words. She was more of a lovemaking sort of gal, but ever since she saw her son's humongous, she's been fantasizing about him giving it to her really rough. This animalistic side of him was really turning her on. The intimate dance she had with him made her forget all about the brutal ing Naruto gave her best friend. She almost forgot how much of a demon her son was in the sack. Look at me, Ka-chan, demanded the blonde and stared into his mother's eyes as she looked up at him. You are going to be cheating on Toussaint with me. Are you okay with that? Electricity coursed through her veins, but she nodded, this time while looking at him. She wasn't sure if she looked reluctant while bobbing her head or if she was enthusiastic. All she cared about right now was taking her mind off her husband and have her son give her the pleasure she deserves. You don't have to worry about that man any longer, declared Naruto with the utmost confidence in his voice. You are mine now, Ka-chan. Kushina stared up at her son for a good minute before tears started welling in her eyes. This response proved to her that he wasn't looking to have a one-night stand with her. He was genuinely interested in coupling with her. She agreed with her son that she was now his, but couldn't find the strength to verbalize it because of the goosebumps she had all over her. Pulling her close, he marked his territory. Minato had his chance with Kushina and blew it with his lust for the Hokage seat. Whether he felt his decisions were for better or for worse, Minato made his bed and now he would have to lay in it. Naruto was going to do the opposite and lay with his mother. Moving his hands down his mother's wide hips, he hooked his fingers under the hem of her dress and bunched a fair bit in his fists. She shook her head at first, realizing what he had planned, but his lust-filled eyes made her hide her face in his chest. Pecking her on her reddening cheek, he began hitching the back of her dress higher and higher until her gorgeous bubble butt popped out. Ripples ran through the doughy flesh-packed cheeks as they were brought out of hiding. Mine, thought Naruto possessively with glossed cerulean orbs as he held his mother's enormous in his hands. Despite his lust for her, he was also deeply in love with her. He would be forceful with her later. For now, he wanted to shower her with some vanilla romance and worship the tale he's been chasing ever since he was a child. Running his hands along the spheres of his mother's tush, he flooded his nervous system with chakra to heighten his sense of touch. He firmly believed that to truly worship a woman's a man must start by familiarizing himself with the texture, shape, curvature and elasticity. His fingertip poked the right cheek and it sank into the big, round flesh. Fanning his hands out underneath her hips, he took however much he could into his palms before letting go of the cheeks then spanking them. The slap was heard all over the training ground, but was quickly overshadowed by Kushina squealing from the stinging pain she felt from getting spanked by such strong hands. Naruto, on the other hand, had his eyes closed and was focusing his chakra. This was allowing him to sense the vibrations emitting from the bouncing, reddening cheeks he had just struck. Wanting to ease his teary-eyed mother, he gave a deep tissue massage to her sore butt. By now her legs were shaking, her thighs squeezing together. He could feel his mouth watering from the arousal he could smell rolling off of her. However, he wasn't even a quarter way through worshipping her. Pushing his neck forward, he looked over her shoulder to cast a gaze down her hitched-up dress. An animalistic growl escaped him to see a tiny black thong sheltering the crevice of his mother cheeks. This was the same thong he saw her wearing when he looked up her kimono all those years ago. His hands shook, his monster hardening as he realized his mother had worn her tightest undergarment just for their date. Pulling back his head from over her shoulder, he looked to see she was blushing apple red because of him making that discovery just now. His heart raced, the blood circulating through his arteries bubbling with a deep, powerful, incestuous hunger. Quickly grabbing hold of her big, fat, he propelled her a foot into the air until she was forced to wrap her legs around his waist. So hot, thought Kushina as she began excreting vaginal fluids due to her son's ministrations. The kneading became rougher, but was still sensual. Once he was content with what he's done with her, he lowered her to the ground, spun her around, and then embraced her from behind. 14.5 inches of breaking steel mashed between his mother's childbearing hips. His arms were wrapped around her waist, his fingers caressing her taut tummy. He began grinding against her, placing his head on her shoulder, taking long whiffs of her sweet-scented shampooed hair. "Ka-chan," whispered Naruto with a deep, husky voice, sending chills down his mother's spine. "You smell so damn good." Kushina was in a daze, finding it hard not to as her son's monster was driving back and forth the bridge between her thong-clad cheeks. Even through his clothing she could feel it throbbing, feel it trying to tear a hole through his trousers. His powerful arm was holding her in place, leaving her with no room to escape. He was grinding against her and juice was trailing down her legs. Violet orbs rolled to the back of her head as her son began nipping on the creamy skin of her neck. She continued sensuously moving her hips, but the amount of pleasure she was in was preventing her from even hearing the music playing in the background. Never in her life had she experienced such raw passion. Never in her life had she thought romance could be so hot and lust-filled, yet still make her feel all warm and tingly inside. She had gravely miscalculated her son's desire for her. Feeling her desire for him skyrocket, she began grinding her hips harder and harder. He rolled her dress back down, wrapped his arms around her and went hammering away at her. Soon the rhythm of his pelvic thrusts matched hers, making it seem like they were ing each other with their clothes on. Oh Kami, Sochi-kun, I'm, panted Kushina as she threw her head back. "I'm coming." Her scrumptious slammed viciously against his solid hard-on, her protected from penetration only by the thong she had on. A violent wave of feminine juice gushed from the depths of her cunt as she shook and squirted, soaking her undergarment and lathering the man-made stage with her nectar. The front of his trousers was also drenched, both with his precum and her excretions. This was her first orgasm while becoming physical with him, and it was the biggest orgasm of her entire life. This was while they still had their clothes on. Oh, how foolish she had been to think her husband could ever compare to their son. How would that tiny pencil ever compare to the beast she was getting clothed with? She was barely able to stand due to the spasms in her legs. Those damn high heels didn't make things easy on her either. That was a good start, began Naruto with a bloodthirsty look in his eyes. Now let's continue. A gasp escaped her throat as he rammed her butt with a powerful thrust, causing her huge tits to jiggle wildly. She could feel the head of his massive tool snuggling against her perineum. This reminded her of the wet dreams she's had about him stretching out both her and with his monster. She was pulled out of her fantasies as he tightened his hold around her taut tummy, forcing the air out of her lungs. The faster music that began playing only made him grind harder against her and made her ground herself harder against him. Okay, so they were now dry humping, but it's not like they're kissing, right? Their bodies writhed in lust and all abandon was gone. Naruto soon slid his hands up and over his mother's huge tits. But by doing so, the love he had for her instantly overpowered his lust. These were the puppies he used to let to get his nutrients. How could he not be gentle with them after their long-awaited reunion? Her big, heavy S were rising and falling with each breath she took. As he slid his hands over, He could feel her erect S trying to pierce a hole through her bra and come out her dress. I want you feed me again, Ka-chan, whispered Naruto while grinding against his mother's backside. What do you think? Would you like me to milk you? Kushina ed as thoughts of her son-ing on her lactating tits made her forbidden desires skyrocket. SS Sochi-kun, I, MMMMHHHHHHPPPHHHH. She was cut off as he sank his teeth on the skin of her neck and bit down like a rabid animal. Satisfied with the hickey he had left on his mother's neck, Naruto gathered as much tit flesh as he could into his hands. For a good 2 minutes, he sensuously bounced the two big, heavy S, using his palms to memorize their shape and size while absently comparing them to Makoto's. He concluded that the two women were almost identical figure-wise. Both had big, fat asses and their tits were big and juicy. They were the perfect MILFs for the blonde mother-lover. Your bra, Ka-chan, whispered Naruto while tweaking his mother's S through her dress. Take it off, now. Kushina whimpered as her son spoke to her in that dark, forceful voice and she found herself submitting to him. He now stood in front of her, waiting for her to comply with his demand. Biting her lips, she reached around her back and began fumbling with the clasp that held her bra together. Her huge tits bounced to show their gratitude, though they were still tucked inside her dress. Her bra was now in her hand, but her son came forward and yanked it from her. Naruto held his mother's bra to his face and inhaled deeply, his nostrils drawing in the scent of the massive S that the garment held in captivity all evening. His trousers got incredibly tight from the thought of him ing his mother's tits. Glancing back at her, he saw she was shaking in her heels and could feel her arousal skyrocket from what she had just seen him do. Tossing the undergarment on the floor, he embraced her from behind and brought his hands back on her chest. Soft and gentle was shoved aside for wild and untamed as he became rougher with her. The padding of her bra was no longer there to prevent him from getting a true feel of her jiggling tits. His cerulean blue eyes were bursting with primal lust as he began mauling at her S like a starved man leaping at a plate of food. Now she was screaming, jolts of pleasure running through her veins from his frenzy worship. Ripples were running across her wide hips as she wiggled them against his crotch. Then, he suddenly let go of her tits, leaving her gasping for breath. SS Sochi-kun, you are, like, a beast. Grabbing her thighs and pulling them apart, he forced her into a squatting position where she had her gorgeous bubble butt pushed out and her hands dangled by her sides. He stroked his through his trousers, but the massive length was begging to be freed from its prison. Seeing his mother in the standing doggy-style position really made him want to the living shit out of her. However, he stuck to his plan and began ramming his pelvis forward, hitting her square between her butt cheeks. Her S and his groans could be heard echoing through the training ground. Letting go of her hands, he pulled her up with him until they stood upright with his chest colliding with her back. Bringing his arms around her, he channeled lightning chakra into his hands and made sure she saw his fingertips crackling with electricity. A dark smirk curled to his lips mostly because his mother was either too innocent to understand what he had planned or was too hopped on pleasure to notice. His hand slowly landed on her tits and he took her S in between two fingers. Then he pinched her S with lightning chakra-coated fingers. Even if this was done through her dress, the electricity was able to penetrate through the garment with ease. It took only a few seconds for her eyes to bug out. Come MMMMMMINNNNGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGGG She was already producing juices from the dry humping and worship, but getting her S pinched with lightning chakra was what got her to release with all her might. That's it, yelled Naruto with a lustful grin on his face. Come for me, Ka-chan. Kushina kept gushing and gushing until her teeth began chattering and her brain cells began scattering. She would have collapsed to her knees had it not been for the tight hold her son had on her. The violent spasms in her legs sapped away whatever little strength she had. Her breathing was labored due to her malfunctioning respiratory system. A powerful white light was straining her eyes, preventing her from seeing or thinking straight. Sweat trickled down her forehead and began merging with the tears that were rolling down her cheeks. The lower half of her dress was completely soiled. The tiny thong she had on was now sticky and was making it really uncomfortable for her as it began riding up her crack. Her legs were all lathered up with her juice and her thighs would stick together each time they made contact. Her high heels and his shoes were also caked with her creamy nectar. She had even squirted all over the man-made stage. That orgasm was insane, so insane. Minato made her orgasm a grand total of 1 time over the course of their marriage. Meanwhile, her son made her gush like a geyser twice without even touching her. Minato may be the head of the household, but not only was Naruto the true man of the house, he was also her god. Turning his dazed mother around, Naruto stared deep into her glossed eyes, searching for the answer he was looking for. This was the final stage he needed to clear before he could enter the next level. She was still struggling to find her voice and words seemed to have died down her throat. In the end, she gave a cute little nod and gave him her consent. His lips descended on hers and jolts of pleasure coursed through their bodies. Their lips parted and they found themselves gauging each other's reaction. Naruto's reaction was simple. He felt like he was the king of the world. Kushina, on the other hand, was immensely happy but also a little conflicted. Happy in the sense that the pleasure she had received overpowered her guilt for cheating on her husband. However, there was still a part of her that was begging her to turn back, repent for her sins and be faithful to her husband. Sure, she was sinking further into infidelity, but it's not like she's having, right? Those full, pouty lips of his mother were begging for a more passionate kiss and he couldn't deny them of that. He crushed against them with his own famished lips. His hands swathed behind her head to ensure she wouldn't be able to wiggle her way out. Squeezing hard on the 2 jiggling spheres of her, he began kissing her harder. She gasped into his mouth, her knees buckling from the sheer intensity of their colliding lips. Taking advantage of her dazed state, he slipped his tongue in her mouth for a brief second, just long enough to make contact with hers. She looked shocked at what he had done, but at no point did she push him away. Their arms enclosed together as she began kissing him back. Chakra was then channeled into the muscles of his tongue as he wrestled with hers, almost instantly ending with her surrendering to him. He could feel the vibrations coming from her mouth as she began louder and louder. "Okami, Sochi-kun," panted Kushina as she tightly wrapped her arms around her son's neck. His kisses now wriggled from her mouth, longingly savoring her cheek and jaw. The ground on which she stood shook, at least for her, as he slammed his lips against hers again. Was this what a makeout session was like? This was so intense. Her back arched as she pulled him down to kiss her more passionately. "You are Why, Ka-chan," growled Naruto as he toyed with his mother's big, fat all while engaging her in a dance of the tongue. A few minutes later, the mother and son separated to gather the necessary oxygen. Their faces were flushed, but they couldn't keep their lust-filled eyes off each other. Kushina suddenly tore away her gaze, picked up her discarded bra and began straightening out her dress. She didn't say a word to her son as she began making her way out the training ground. "Hey," began Naruto, only to see his mother picking up the pace. "Hey, wait, Ka-chan." The only reply he got was the clicking of his mother's heels as she stormed off. Just then, a tall black-haired man appeared in a swirl of leaves. "What will you do now, Naruto?" XXX. Naruto was a lot of things, but he wasn't easy to scare. Well, he was scared right now. The dance with his mother had gone better than he could have ever imagined. He kept gliding with her on the stage, continuing to her, until she gestured for him to feel her up. It was she who gave him the permission to grope her and kiss her. At no point in time did he force himself on her. From manhandling her, to kissing her, to making her squirt like everything he did was according to plan, and his plans were foolproof. So, why did she run off like that? According to his calculations, after their makeout session, she should have requested him to take her home and continue the night there. Seeing no need for Sasuke or Itachi to continue performing their guard duty, he relieved them from their tasks and thanked them for playing their role.